Good morning, Kahal Kadosh. Beruchim Habaim to everybody. I apologize for the slight delay today. Erev Shabbat Kodesh Perashat Behar. Friday, the 19th day of Iyar, the 20th of May, the 34th day of the counting of the Omer. Today's class, graciously sponsored by Eli Levy and family, Le'ilui Nishmat, his beloved grandfather, Eliyahu Levi ben Simcha. Additionally, the class of today, dedicated Le'ilui Nishmat, Mr. Charlie Saka, Yeshaya ben Lora alav shalom, and additionally, today's class, graciously sponsored by Mr. A.B. Franco and family for the refuah shelema of his dear brother, Moshe ben Mazal. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give him a refuah shelema among the Holim of Am Israel. Amen. Let's discuss for a few minutes today the Sefirah number 34. We learned this through the week. The host of the week is Aharon Kohen. The special guest of today is Yosef Hasadik. Aharon Kohen represents not only the concept of peace, pursuing peace, loving peace, but actually Aharon Kohen represents Hod, the beauty of Am Israel, the beauty of the Torah. But as we'll mention earlier in the week, that the word Hod also means Hoda'ah, gratitude and recognition to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yosef HaSadik represents the Yesod. The Yesod literally means in English the word foundation. This concept of foundation, according to the Sefirot of the Omer, have a lot of different meanings. Yes, literally it means foundation. Like any good matter in life needs to have a solid foundation. And also in the physical aspect of life, the essence of Yosef HaSadik represents the holiness of the person. So the Zohar Kadosh says clearly that the holiness of the person, and that means in the men's, when it comes to the Berit Milah, and in the ladies, when it comes to the concept of the family purity, concept known as Taharat HaMishpacha, that becomes the foundation of the spiritual life of the person. What does that mean? Somebody may ask, okay, so I have an issue in that department, but at least I do many other good things. Unfortunately, I have to say that according to the writings of our Hachamim, there is no coincidence why Yosef represents the foundation of holiness of a Jew. And it doesn't matter male or female, which generation the persons live. This topic is not a foreign topic to the Jewish people. It's mentioned in the Torah openly. But additionally, we know that throughout the year, we have something called Shovavim. This period in the winter, usually known as Shovavim, are specific weeks of the Jewish calendar that a person is given an opportunity to remedy the sins of the past, especially related to this essence of personal holiness. So the Hachamim HaKedoshim and the Sefarim HaKedoshim write clearly that this concept of personal holiness is so powerful that the Irat Shamayim of the person is determined to a certain extent based on how holy and careful the person is with the Berit Milah, and in the ladies department with Taharat HaMishpacha. Today, we are going to learn an additional angle for the Sefirah of Yosef and Aharon. The first exercise of the day, we're going to call it, as we usually do, Ben Adam Lamakom, my godly relationship. So today's message is about a very powerful prayer, which I believe that everybody says. It doesn't need much introduction, but we are talking about the berachot known as Birkot HaShachar, the morning blessings that after the person gets up, took a shower, left the bathroom, did whatever the person needed to do at all levels. Now the person is ready, and one of the first things we do is what? Elokai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. We start mentioning different praises and examples of gratitude concerning the fact that the person was able to get up in the morning. Number one. Number two, not only that a person was able to get up in the morning, to wake up in the morning, but additionally, if you follow even the English translation or the Spanish in the Birkot HaShahar, we are going to see that we are actually reciting berachot for different matters of life. We give Hashem thankfulness for the brain, for the movement, for the walking, for who we are. And if you go through the entire gamma of Birkot HaShahar, literally without any of the above, how can a person begin the day without counting their blessings of health and physical well-being? Therefore, it says in the Sefirah of today, number one, Birkot HaShahar. Birkot HaShahar, and I repeat, I believe that whoever will be listening to this shi'ur or watching it live does the Birkot HaShahar. But if we never thought of the importance of Birkot HaShahar, maybe today is the day to start. In honor of the 34th day of the Omer, start the day with Hashem. Besides the Modeh Ani. Modeh Ani is a known concept, but Modeh Ani is only one small sentence compared to the many, many blessings that the Birkot HaShahar brings upon the person. That's number one. Let's move on in our day-to-day quest for betterment and self-improvement. I am so impressed at this moment that people are waiting literally outside even of the barber shop to take a haircut, since according to the Sephardic tradition, today is the first day that halachically, according to all opinions, with the exception of the Mekubalim, that haircuts are allowed according to the Sephardic tradition. In the Ashkenazic tradition, I believe it was yesterday. In the Sephardic tradition is today. So it's so beautiful to see so many people inside of the store and so many people hanging around outside of the store. Now, let's go a bit further. Let's move on to the next level of bringing a good foundation to our home. And here the Sefer of today brings several examples. One example, the Sefer says, make sure that our home is spiritually beautiful. Now your question will be, what does it mean spiritually beautiful? We thought that beauty is only connected to the physical. I believe that that is not an accurate answer. Actually, when it comes to the performance of the mitzvot, there is a concept in the Torah that says, Ze keli ve'anvehu, this is my God, and I will adorn him, which literally this verse means. And Rashi brings it down, as well as the many different mefarshim, that clearly states that there is concept of a person enhancing the way the mitzvah is being done. Make sure that you have a nice mezuzah. When I mean nice, I don't mean only the external case. That's beautiful. But obviously, we all know well this, that the inner parchment of the mezuzah is what really makes the mezuzah. Don't spend more money on the case than on the parchment. Usually should be the opposite. Spend a few extra dollars if necessary to get a first-class mezuzah. That is, every instant that the mezuzah is in the doorpost of our homes, not only brings a godly presence in our home, but also brings blessing and protection inside of the home and outside of the home, the way it's written in the Sefarim HaKedoshim. Today, I'd like to bring up one more point. And I hope it doesn't apply to anyone, but maybe occasionally it may apply. Be careful with the pictures that the person hangs around in their home. Sometimes people, in the name of art, they have all kinds of pictures, all kinds of drawings that halachically are a halachic problem, especially if there is certain content which is not in accordance to our Torah. And this is something that perhaps is not the beautification of the home, although the person's mind could say, oh, this was done by this designer, by this painter, by this artist, and nobody removes their credit. But we need to have this in mind, that like the mezuzah, the presence of a holy object in our home enhances the foundation of holiness and beautifies our home, the presence of things which are inappropriate also has an effect in the godliness and the spirituality of the person's home. Additionally, beautifying the home without investing much. You have the mezuzah, beautiful. You don't have pictures or drawings which are halachically problematic, and you can check with your local rabbi to have a better understanding what it means. But also, one idea of the Sefirah of today is beautifying the home through peace, through calmness. One of the suggestions that it brings, and obviously doesn't take much, but it's an interesting angle. It says, play music in your home. We listen to music in our home. Obviously, kosher music. I know that for the Omer we were not able to listen, but now already we can listen, and there is so much new kosher Jewish music that came out in honor of Lakva Omer. So it says here that when music of Kedusha, obviously, is being played in the home, or calm and soothing music is being played in the home, that brings peace to the mind of the person, that brings peace to the home, which no one can deny. That is one of the greatest foundations of our life, is the concept of having Shalom Bayit at home, which is a magnet to Hashem's presence in our day-to-day life. One more concept before we move to the next message is about Hoda'ah. Hoda'ah, yesterday, for those who listen or watch the class, there was a sponsorship by a dear member of our congregation that sponsored the Seudat Mitzvah of the breakfast in honor of Lakva Omer, but specifically to be making a Seudat Hoda'ah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to express publicly to Hashem a gratitude statement and a gratitude Seudah for a miracle that a person experienced. And it doesn't matter what was the reason why the Seudat Hoda'ah was made. But the bottom line is that a public expression of gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems to fit in the how do I say, in the Sefirah of today. And this is something that I believe that is not a novelty that I'm saying. The topic of making a Seudat Hoda'ah is a common thing, but many times people believe that something very extreme needs to happen for the Seudat Hoda'ah. A person had a medical condition and Baruch Hashem turned out to be nothing. Do a Seudat Hoda'ah. A person had a medical condition and Baruch Hashem, he went through the process and he got healed and he's healthy, etc. Make a Seudat Hoda'ah. And whatever situation, somebody asked me the other day that they made a great deal in business and they asked him if he can make a Seudat Hoda'ah. I said to the person, Of course, you can make a Saudat Hoda'ah. And we need to remember a key fact when it comes to gratitude to Hashem. The more grateful we are, the more opportunities, that's the word I was looking for. Hashem gives us more opportunities to be thankful for. And who doesn't want to be thankful? Especially when life many, many times is surrounded by all kinds of situations and challenges. Now, Ben Adam la Havero. In the way that Hashem created the world, it says in the Sefirah of today, is Hashem created the world in a beautiful way, in a beautifully physical way. That mankind misses the world that Hashem created, we understand that. Throughout history, we have many people that attempted to change history, some of them successful, some of them not. But bottom line, it says, look at the world that Hashem created and be thankful by the variations and the varieties that Hashem created, if it's in the fruits, if it's in the vegetables, if it's in the aspect of colors. Can you imagine living in a world that is black and white? Can you imagine having one fruit and one vegetable forever? And that's going to be also black and white? Baruch Hashem, today, you go to the supermarket, wherever you are, and you're going to see a huge variety. Your wife asks you, go get me peppers. You come to the supermarket. Then you stand in front of the peppers. And you have options. You have red pepper, orange pepper, yellow pepper, red pepper, I said, green pepper, at least 4 or 5, and probably there is purple, probably. That's an example. Apples. We mentioned this a long time ago. One day, a farmer told me that there are close to 50 varieties when it comes to the apples. Even in the supermarket, how many variations of apples do you see? Green, red, yellow, wax, not wax, Fuji apples, Macintosh apples, and whatever label and branding and crafting they have, etc. So we are dealing with Hashem created the world in a magnificent and a colorful way. Why do I say this? Because the next message is going to relate to humans. Humans. Us. Bene Adam. Descendants of Adam and Hava. And there are different types of people. The Gemara already tells us that there are 3 basic differences in human life. The brain, the way of thinking, the way the person looks, the face, and the way the voice of the person sounds. These are 3 basic things. So the message of the Sefirah of today is that when we see people, and occasionally we may make some type of judgment, the Sefirah of today says, don't judge the person based on the 2 or 3% that you are seeing, but deal with the person as a whole. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot puts it all. Heve mekabel et kol ha'adam besever panim yafot. Welcome the entire person. Although other Mishnah says mekabel et kol adam means every person, but there is another Mishnah that says et kol ha'adam, the entire essence of the person. Okay, so this person may have a 3% deficiency in a certain area. Let's say, I don't know any human being that is perfect, besides my wife, obviously. The rest of us, me, and everyone else, always have something to tweak and to fix and to improve. And it is fine. This is the way Hashem created us, with a certain level of deficiency. But our ultimate goal is what? To become the best person that I can become based on the essence of godliness that I have in my life. And that is an additional message that the Sefirah of today brings upon us. And Ben Adam le'atzmo. Ben Adam le'atzmo, that's going to be an interesting one. Talks about Yosef as-Saddiq. What made Yosef to become a Saddiq? What happened to Yosef that became a Saddiq? So the Sefirah of today discusses Yosef's behavior in Egypt. How did Yosef conducted himself while he was in Egypt? He had plenty of nisyonot. And yet, Yosef as-Saddiq survived in an environment, in an environment that if Chas v'Shalom, Yosef in Egypt would have failed, we would understand it and accepted and no complaints. Hazit, by himself, from the age of 17 years old, for the next 20 some years, 22 years, separated from his family. Do you know the amount of nisyonot? Do you know the amount of challenges that Yosef as-Saddiq needed to overcome? Just the Torah mentions one incident with Potiphar's wife. But she was after him for an entire year, 3 times a day. And then we know the ultimate situation that happened. That made Yosef as-Saddiq. So the Sefirah of today says as follows: be careful with your eyes. Be careful what you look at. Many times people get attracted by the external beauty of another human being. And there is nothing wrong that Hashem made the person beautiful. But that doesn't mean that beauty is the only aspect of life that we look at. Beautiful, excellent. The Sefirah of today says, first of all, you need to be careful. Because if you only judge the book by its cover, you only judge a person by the way that they look, especially the face. What about the heart? What about the midot? What about the behavior? So again, the Sefirah of today is not against beauty, but it's against the person making decisions based on beauty or external appearances and not in the actual essence of the heart of the person. Let me see if there is one more thing that we can add. Otherwise, with your permission, I'd like to turn a bit to the Perashah of today, Perashat Behar. We know Perashat Behar, it's a Perashah that contains, perhaps before I say that, a short Perashah, relatively short compared to last week's Torah portion, and one of the mitzvot that we find that the Torah devotes a few pesukim in the beginning of the Perashah is about the mitzvah of Shemittah, the mitzvah that on the 7th year, the land of Israel needs to come to a resting place. And this is something that by divine providence, this year in Eretz Israel, this is exactly what is going on. The land of Israel is in Shemitah mode. And this is something that today, Baruch Hashem, it's a great blessing for Eretz Israel that if I understood the report in Hebrew written in the beginning of this year of Shemitah, there was a study made that in the history of Am Israel, for the first time that they have written records about this concept, more than 50% of the farmers are observing the mitzvah of Shemitah. This by itself is a great merit and a great zechut to Am Israel and Eretz Israel. As the Pasuk writes, B'Shabbata ha'aretz Shabbat la'Hashem. The land goes into a sabbatical mode. You know that sometimes college professors and universities, I'm not sure if rabbis, but definitely in that field, they use a word sabbatical. Sabbatical means that they take a year off from the teaching in order to study and to do research, etc. This concept of a sabbatical is actually coming from this week's Perashah, Perashat Behar, when the Pasuk writes, Beshabetah Ha'ares. And Hashem, the way you look at the Pesukim, guarantees that for the zechut of the Shemitah observance, Beracha will follow the person in an unprecedented ways that the human mind cannot understand. Because usually the Gemara compares the land to fertility of the human body. So usually, and I'm going to say this respectfully, the body can produce children and carry children. The younger the person is, the greater the chances. But we know that medically speaking, once a person reaches a certain age, the possibility of conceiving a child gets diminished as the years goes by and the body ages, etc. Now, obviously, this matter is determined by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there are miracles constantly happening that against all odds, above and beyond medical's opinions, people of certain age were able to give birth to healthy and happy and holy children. I'm not referring to the miracles of Sara Imenu, Yocheved, the mother of Moshe, Hannah in the book of Shmuel. We're talking about our days. Now, the land of Israel, as it ages, as the 7-year cycle goes into the counting, the first year more, the first year less, the third year less, the fourth, fifth, the 6th year should be the driest year of the season harvest. And yet the Torah says, no, Besiviti et birkati lachem. I will command, God says, I will order the blessing to come to you. And what kind of blessing? Sheloshet shanim. The land will perform 300% more, because you need for the 6th year, you need for the 7th year, which is the current year now, and you need also for year number 8, or the first year, that will be the new cycle of the 7-year cycle of Shemittah. So if we need to summarize this mitzvah of Shemittah, I believe that the key word and the key aspect of Shemittah is about emunah in a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because Rashi, if you look in the beginning of the Perashah, let me see if I have a Chumash near me. I brought my portable library so I can give the class from my car. And the reason why I'm giving it from my car is simply because if I'm doing it in a public place, Baruch Hashem, I'll have to interrupt often. So therefore, I'd rather do it quietly. Maybe next week we'll change the venue. But nevertheless, Rashi brings an interesting concept. An interesting concept when it comes to the mitzvah of Shemitah. The Torah uses, the recorder fell. The Torah uses a statement. The Torah says, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe behar Sinai. God spoke to Moshe in Mount Sinai. I ask you a question. Where in all of the mitzvot of the Torah, or most of the mitzvot of the Torah, given by Mount Sinai? That's the only mountain connected to the aspect of Torah. Why the Torah specifically comes and gives me a message about the mitzvah of Shemitah in Mount Sinai? So Rashi says, the same way all the details of Shemitah were given in Mount Sinai, every mitzvah with the details were given in Mount Sinai. And not only that, the Gemara discusses an interesting concept of action or learning. What's greater? Is it greater to do the mitzvah, or it's greater to learn about the performance of the mitzvah? This is being discussed in Gemara Kiddushin towards the end, and the Gemara says, according to the Bitarfon, the action is the main. According to the Biakiva, the learning. So what was the Talmudic answer? Both answers are correct, because if you don't learn, how can you do the mitzvah in a proper manner? So it says a very interesting concept, and it says also in the Tosafot that a person, many times a person does the mitzvah with one goal. I want to get by the mitzvah. And the truth is that mitzvot should not be done in that way. Occasionally the person may do that, but our ultimate goal as Yehudim, as individuals, men, women, and children is what? Do the mitzvah to the best way possible. Believe me, that if a person doesn't learn about the mitzvah itself, the person will never be able to do the mitzvah in the most beautiful way. And God forbid, I'm not saying a statement to put anything or anyone down. I'm saying literally that if a person doesn't learn how to do the mitzvah, how we improving in the performance of the mitzvah? Is that simple? Is that simple? The more we learn about it, the more we become aware, the more we become conscientious, like we're learning in the Kollel, in the evening program, the laws of sanctity of the synagogue, for example, right? Kedushat Bet HaKnesset. And to many people, Kedushat Bet HaKnesset means don't do this, don't do that, come dressed properly. That's beautiful. But Kedushat Bet HaKnesset, according to the Halacha, discusses if a person can even eat or drink inside of the synagogue. And we know that many synagogues have a policy, no coffee and drinks in the synagogue, etc. And that's beautiful, because maybe the thought is in the name of beauty, but the thought does carry a halachic ramification. And I only brought this, etc. You know, I'm very impressed how many people, they are very thoughtful and conscientious of Kedushat Bet HaKnesset, that many people took upon themselves after we started to learn this topic, not to bring the cell phone inside of the synagogue. Okay? Now, and we know how distractive the cell phone has become in our life. Okay? But nevertheless, that for that person, now that the person learned what does it mean, the sanctity and the holiness of the synagogue, it means leave the cell phone on the side or shut it off before you come in, or don't engage in idle talk in the prayer, and just pray and be respectful and Shalom al Israel. And that is what the Gemara concludes at the end. And it says that a person learns and a person fulfills the mitzvah. So therefore, the Torah is trying to tell us, to teach us, that don't think for a moment that because a mitzvah is sporadic, like the Shemittah mitzvah, that there is nothing much that is applicable. The mitzvah of Shemittah teaches us two major concepts in our day-to-day life. Number one, emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Number two, we take the mitzvah of Shemittah as the mitzvah that is close to the essence of Shabbat Kodesh, because that is the language that the Torah uses. Beshabbatah ha'aretz Shabbat laHashem. The land will rest a sabbatical year of rest. So Be'ezat Hashem, Hashem should help us, like the way that we were learning today about the mitzvah of Shemitah, which is currently applicable in Israel. That's why you may see perhaps some shortage of some types of fruits and vegetables, or even higher prices because they need to be imported or bought from Gentiles, etc. So all these halachic ramifications apply in Israel. Outside of Israel, we had received a few announcements from the kashrut organizations that there were some products that originally came from Israel, and obviously that may create a halachic problem, and those require a halachic research. So in the event that you go, let's say, to a supermarket or you go to Costco and the sticker says product of Israel, you need to check with your local Orthodox rabbi to guide you how to handle that. Most likely may not be permissible to be eaten because it possesses the sanctity of the land of Israel. And one of the ideas of Shemittah is that the fruits and the wines and the vegetables from Israel, they cannot leave the land of Israel due to the Kedusha, due to the level of holiness that the land of Israel carries in this particular year. So we say, this Kula Mitzvot to the generous sponsors of today's class. I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. Those in Brooklyn, Be'ezat Hashem, tonight, I will be speaking in Bnei Ishak tomorrow morning and afternoon before Mincha in Sha'arei Zion, and for Saudah Shilishit, Be'ezat Hashem, will be at the SLC congregation, all in the Brooklyn area. So, Faddal, come, introduce yourself, and I wish everybody to have a Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. Thank you. Kol Tov.